Application Security Weekly delivers interviews and news from the worlds of AppSec, DevOps, and all the other ways people find and fix software flaws. Join us as we explore how the latest news highlights modern security practices or reminds us of the missing ones. We also bring insights from interviews on topics from training to threat modeling, from open source tools to cloud-native techniques, plus an occasional reference from new wave to synthwave. Find us at securityweekly.com/subscribe or look for Application Security Weekly wherever you pick your podcasts.
And we're here. Mr. Winn Schwartau is here with us today. Winn, welcome to the show.
Well, no, thank you for having me. I appreciate it very much.
It's going to be, I'm very much looking forward to this conversation. So many directions we can go, so much we want to cover. I do want to start, Winn, with how you got your start in information security, if there was such a thing back then when you started.
When I started, okay. Information security began roughly late 1983.
Mm-hmm.
I was living in San Diego. A bar buddy of mine was a sales rep for Western Digital. And apparently they had asked him if they knew anybody who would help analyze their new security product. So he asked me, and I go, oh, hell yeah, I'd be happy to. Having zero idea what any of that meant. And I ended up in somewhere, Irvine, with Western Digital. And they had a security product called Stop, using the original DES 2001 hardware chip that I think they were the only licensee in the U.S. at the time.
Yeah.
And they had this product and they said, evaluate it and tell us what to do. And I go, yes, sir. And I go home and I go, what the hell is it? I had no idea what I was doing. And poke around a little, as much as we were able to poke around back in those days, and came back with some recommendations to them. They said they didn't want to follow through with the project. And that kicked me into designing the first PC and netware security products evaluated by the DoD, and that was 85 to 86, I think.
And, I mean, where was encryption at that time? Heavily regulated still?
Encryption in that time, roughly, the DES was it. The banking industry for... if I remember the numbers right, X9 integrity checking used a triple DES implementation, and they were given permission to do that. IBM was one of the leaders in those end-to-end DES units back in the day. There was not much else outside of the experimental and academic worlds that I recall. It was a DES-based world. EFT was done on it. Culpeper, all the exchanges that they were all done on either DES or triple DES at the time.
Yeah, and it was a licensed thing and all that kind of stuff. Amazing how that aspect of our industry has progressed.
And you could not export it at all. I don't know how many national security laws I broke back then by carrying crypto around the world.
Right.
But I was notified very quickly by the NSA.
But some of your early works were focused on cyber war. Probably just after that time. Was it the 90s you were talking about?
Oh boy. I had done a bunch of writing in other areas. I wrote a book on Apple computers, a couple other things in there that were fairly meaningless. But after we sold the PC encryption company to one of the Baby Bells back then and Novell, I took some time off because I had this vision. It was a vision. And I really like taking long showers. It's like before this show, I took a nice long shower to kind of get
prepped for it
and get in. That's how I get in the zone and get to thinking. And I was in the shower, and it was a virus. It was like right after the Morris worm and early Michelangelo days.
Yep.
It was about 88, 89. And so I'm going, oh, there's a virus. Well, what if there's another virus? Oh, what if I'm a bad guy and I do 10 viruses? wow, now what if I listen in on the lines? What if I inject signal here? What if I passively intercept here? What if I, and this whole thing had this neon sign that said information warfare. And it was, holy shit. So the water got cold and I ran back to my desk and I started scribbling those notes. It's like when you get out of a dream, you want to make your notes. And I wanted to get everything down as quickly as I possibly could. And then I wrote the original Terminal Compromise, which became PearlHarbor.com and Die Hard 4.
And Die Hard 4. That's much later than 1988 or...
Yeah, the Terminal Compromise came out in 90, 91, I think. PearlHarbor.com was 2001. And then I forget when the movie was.
But basically all the similar premise?
They were all identical. Yeah, It was bad guy from Japan. We nuked him. He got pissed. I'm taking you down. I'm dying anyway. Nothing to lose. And here's how I'm going to do it. So he puts together an information warfare army, uses multiple vectors on attacks, and then the hacking community kind of gets together and goes from there.
And it's amazing to think how that's changed today, where it's a standard part of militarization for all nations today.
Yeah. That's when the book Information Warfare came out 2 years later, whatever. And for me, it was just more a non-fictional account of what the fiction was. And I'm not a good fiction writer. I've written one novel, 2 versions of it, and I'm not good at it. It's a good story. It just needed a real proper author. And Information Warfare was the non-fictional version, and my ignorance and total oblivion to the universe was such that why is the CIA coming to our house? Why is the FBI? Why are all these people suddenly really interested in what I've been doing? And that began a wake-up period of entering into a world with which I was absolutely unfamiliar, unprepared.
I think most people don't realize how early on in the process that the U.S. government specifically was interested in information warfare and the connectivity between computers and how that could be have impact in the physical world.
Well,
right? It goes back to Reagan, right? Is it? I mean, did Reagan watch War Games and had a meeting with his cabinet? I get bits and pieces. When
it goes back to probably DARPA's first experiment with Vince Cerf, and what was that, 69? And how can we get a bit from here to there and then execute it? How can we communicate? And then a little while later, there was the key issue of communication survivability. And that all came out of the U.S. government, because prior to that, it was absolute total sneakerware. It was, and then it evolved, and now we run the planet on it.
Right, which is kind of scary to think about.
It is plenty scary. Plenty scary.
How did you get involved with DEF CON? DEF CON seems to be a huge part of your story, Winn.
Everything was very serendipitous. I guess I'd had a couple books out, and there were other conferences before DEF CON as well.
Sure.
I made a list of some of them. Was it PumpCon, HoHoCon, SummerCon, Hope? Yep. There were a number of other, and I guess I was, running around talking about cyber war, info war kind of stuff. And I got a call from Jeff. So that would have.
Wait, now out of the blue, you didn't know Jeff from a hole in the wall?
To the best of my knowledge, no. If we knew each other, I don't remember it, and I'll attribute that to Alzheimer's. But I don't think I knew him.
So you get a call out of blue from this guy, Jeff Moss. You have no idea who he is, and he says, "Come speak at my conference."
Maybe I read in Fract or something.
Yeah, sure.
It's possible. Hey, would you come and speak at DEF CON? What's DEF CON? Oh, it's my conference in Vegas. Yeah, sure. And
now it wasn't DEF CON 1. It wasn't DEF CON 1. Was the first one you were at? Was it 3?
No, 2.
It was 2. Okay.
Yeah, up at the top, we had badges, and I think one of my badges says, what is your interest?" And I said, "Herf guns" or something like that. Um, and so I did a speech, and that was the uh, Deck, Desikas, Mitnick
Mm-hmm.
nightmare was going on. And right after my talk, John Markoff of New York Times fame said, "Winn, why did you do it?" Huh? Why did I do what? And he goes, "Why did you hack this and hack this?" And I go, number one, I'm not sure I know how to. Number two, no, it wasn't me. And then it turned out that was one of the war between Christ, the Deck guys, and somehow Mitnick got involved, and
Yeah, there was
Ray Kaplan, and it was they had taken over my account at the Well.
all right. So hold on, but for those younger
sorry,
younger folks, what was the Well? Let's start there.
the Well was for me, dial up. It was a modem dial up bulletin board service out of San Francisco that was a community thing. And what wellness, I forget what well stood for, but it was a hippy dippy phrase.
Yeah. Was it? It was in someone's house, like in San Francisco, right? The server.
If it was in their house, I don't know. I don't know.
But was Mitnick on those boards back then? Is that some of the story? This is in books that I've read. So
yeah, there was a war between Kevin Desikas, Kevin Mitnick. Somehow Ray Kaplan got involved because of the Deck things, and I've heard.
Yeah,
it is so long ago. But back to Jeff. So after DEF CON 2, Jeff comes up to me and he says, "Well, what'd you think of it?" And I said, some of the talks were interesting, but I said, no offense, but most of the speakers are boring. You really need to lighten this thing up and add some fun. And he
fun
goes,
to
like,
the speakers
said,
now, because DEF CON 2, is that still Alexis Park?
No, this was at the round one that they blew up a couple years later.
Oh,
the Sands.
Well, was it at the Sands before the Riviera? Right.
Oh yeah, it was before the Riv. It was the Riv was much later because you had the Monte Carlo, you had others in the middle.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was the Sands. I'd have to look it up, but it was the round flying saucer looking thing. And I said, maybe you need a game or something to kind of. And he goes, like what? And I go, Hacker Jeopardy, And he goes, okay, make it happen. And that
so that's how Hacker Jeopardy was a conversation between you and Jeff.
It was, we were drinking after DEF CON 2. And I was saying, you could do this, you could do this. Well, then do it. And that's how it began.
That's interesting because I don't think folks in our industry would lead you to believe that the talks at an early DEF CON were kind of dry. Because we think of DEF CON today as a party where we have things like Hacker Jeopardy, but that it wasn't until DEF CON 3,
people,
right?
Over the years, whether it's in our field or any field, public speaking is the number one fear amongst
most people. Yeah, I agreed. Yeah.
And so that lends itself to becoming very stilted as to what sort of expectations. And I think just in any industry, experience gives you the comfort level to be on stage or be on an interview or live TV or anything. It's purely experience. And so in the early days, I remember one of the pictures I have is of Mark Ludwig. And I remember his talk. Mark Ludwig was out of Arizona, and he wrote the Virus Creation Toolkit.
Yeah, you can cut to my screen and see a picture of Mark. Which DEF CON was this when?
That says Sahara.
Mm-hmm.
So that's going to be 2 or 3.
Okay.
Wait a minute. No, that badge is that's 2.
Okay. So it's your first DEF CON. And now who was Mark Ludwig?
Yeah. He was a virus thing. He was the Virus Creation Toolkit author out of somewhere in Arizona. And he published some of the first works on how to do polymorphics, really early stuff by today's standards. But back then, there was a big controversy around him as to whether he was good for the industry or bad for the industry.
So wait, you had this conversation with Jeff after DEF CON 2, and off the top of your head, you're like, Hacker Jeopardy. But you hadn't like really thought this out.
It
doesn't sound like you thought this out. It doesn't sound like you thought that out.
No, it was. I mean, it's like BlobbyCon at any place we go. People just, shit comes out of their mouths.
That's
right?
Fine. You can curse. It's fine.
And it was nothing different than that.
Yeah.
Here's an idea. Bam. And
wait, so what did you do? So what
make
did you
it
do?
so?
Yeah. So, but what did you do after? Jeff gave the Captain Picard make it so.
What did I do? Probably nothing for 10 months. I spoke at DEF CON 3, and I got a pin board, little cards, and we read the back of the card and had these teams.
So it was very analog. So, but in Jeopardy, though, people have to buzz in on the actual show. How did you do that in the early analog days?
Why don't you ask the internet? I mean, I don't remember. I mean, I got to imagine we did something like, hidden,
yeah. And
because there was no tech. We used zero technology.
Right. But lots of alcohol.
Massive amounts of alcohol. I do know that in one of the early ones, we had people wearing hats so they could be ring in with Nerf bats.
Mm.
And so it was a visual thing. It wasn't electronically timed and precise like Aaron does today.
Yeah, sure. And so what was the content in Hacker Jeopardy? Is it trivia about
Mary Tyler Moore reruns, encryption? It was stuff I made up. I'd sit with my wife and my daughter. What's kind of cool? And I was trying to do roughly 50% tech and 50% Grand Canyon, Paris, other stuff.
Right.
And just split it up. That's all. Had some fun.
Obviously, people liked it and it caught on, right?
It was amazing. It really was amazing how fast it grew from a room that was 200 people packed to the rafters to finally that 6,000 people in the hall. Yeah, it was amazing.
How did it progress over the years? Just bigger, more technology, but the same premise where people basically get really drunk and play Jeopardy.
People basically. Did you have the picture of Mitnick there? Did I give you that one?
I'm not sure if I have one of Mitnick. I have one of you the first time you played Hacker Jeopardy.
Oh, that was after I had retired from hosting it.
Oh, okay, so that's later. Let's see.
You might have one of Mitnick there if I send it to you. It really didn't change. The format was the same. We went to a projector system. It was still heavily analog. And then during one of them, Windows 8 had just come out. And somebody said, let's use the Windows 8 machine for Hacker Jeopardy. That was an epic 45-minute fail in front of 4,000 people.
Oh.
It was fun. It really was. It was a lot of fun, a lot looser back in those days. And I'm just so proud that it is still going. And Aaron's got it now with all the technology and the synchronization. We were able to get it all working online in early COVID, to start doing it remotely, and then synchronizing the latency and the ring-ins, and brought the tech to it. And I think Aaron's kept the snark going very, very well.
Seems like a pretty important part and representation of hacker culture. You can kind of hack together an event in a game at a conference, have fun, and give some people to look forward to that it's fun, right? Is that the goal?
Jeopardy is such an iconic institution. It began in '64. A lot of people forget how old it is. And when people cut classes in college, they'd cut it to watch Jeopardy in the dorm rooms on a little 12-inch black and white TV.
Mm-hmm.
It is absolutely iconic. I'm still a huge fan. My wife and I watch it religiously. And that was in the early days. It was, I wonder when Merv Griffin is going to sue us.
Yeah. I always wondered
that. It was
that.
seriously in our brains. And that was, 20 years before a lot of the Richard Stallman kind of ideas of fair use, and some of the cases had not gone to the Supreme Court about can you use the name? Are you harming the brand and all of that kind of stuff? But thankfully it never hit, because I guess from our standpoint, we always viewed Jeopardy with tremendous respect.
Mm. Why is DEF CON so important to our community, Winn? I mean, is it some of the beginnings of our community being, going to that? I mean, there were other conferences always, obviously, but I feel like it has a special place in helping build our community.
Jeff said to everybody what he said to me. Okay, go do it.
Mm.
I got this idea. Go do it. I'll give you the square footage. Go do it. And that was an incredible amount of freedom, because don't forget the conferences that existed back then, the little, the hopes and all that. I mean, they never, it was a different culture. And real conferences like ISP News, I forget the name of the MIS had a conference. There were a few others that were much more vendor oriented
or academic, like Usenix must have been around for quite some time.
Usenix was around. There were some, but that again was on the academic side, and getting the sharing of academic information was not quite as easy back in the 80s as it is today. Mm. So you really had to go for it. So I never participated in, well, that's not true. The NCSC, National Computer Security Center. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And that was late 80s, early 90s as well. But Jeff said, go for it. Do whatever the hell you want to do. Have fun. Don't hurt people. Be educational. Be thoughtful. Be nice. It was totally laissez-faire. And what happens to any population that gets big? Well, you bring in government, or you end up with real chaos.
Yeah. Well, because you bring in the larger you said, like the group gets, the more different types of people and different populations, people of certain character, it tend to show up more, right? Because it's bigger.
Absolutely. But I guess the thing that I've always questioned, and a lot of us agree, and it's not a criticism, it's just an observation, at what was the optimum size for DEF CON?
Yeah.
Because I think most people agree it's just too damn big.
Mm-hmm.
What was the optimum size? And then that becomes the bar discussion.
Right.
And given venue and all that, I think most people that were there would go back to 5,000 people at the AP.
Mm-hmm.
What most people would say.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think once you grow past a certain size, you tend to form smaller communities within the larger conference.
Well, the other thing that happened, don't forget, is you end up in a casino hotel. All the rules change. You don't own everything. You got to walk through a casino in order to get from point A to point B. If it's for a bar to a talk, to go outside, you got to go through the casino. And at the AP, because it's a non-casino hotel, you could lounge anywhere. Mm. And that made for a very different experience.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting how it embodies that kind of freedom, right? It's associated with hacking in the hacker community.
All the hallways at the AP were lined with people, plugged in, wired up, for such as it was back in those days. And doing that at a casino hotel is either a violation of law 1, 2, 3, or 42. God knows which one. But you can't do the same level of casualness doesn't exist anymore.
Yeah,
at most events, but especially a casino event, a casino venue.
there's a lot of shenanigans I feel like happen at DEF CON in a lot of conferences, but I feel like those are important as long as no one's getting hurt and stuff's not getting damaged. But that's happened, right?
There has been, unfortunately, some damage at the AP. I mean, Jeff had a budget for damage at the AP, and it was stupid vandalism. It's like, vandalism is not cool. DDoS is not cool. Using a hammer on somebody's head, not cool. I mean, there's just so many things that should be intuitively obvious, but a lot of the people that were attending and still do attend were very, very young, given incredible freedom and perhaps more access to alcohol and other substances than they should have at that age.
Yeah, because I feel like as hackers, we explore the what if, right? We have a lot of these hypotheses that we have to prove. And oftentimes it's very productive, but oftentimes not so much. Right? There's a line there, I feel like. Yeah.
I'm just going to draw the line at destructive and malicious.
Well, didn't they fill the pool?
You want to be malicious on my phone booth, then you buy my phone booth. Don't rip it off the AP's wall.
Right. Didn't they fill the pool with some kind of substance?
What they have is all these bubbly fountains, ground fountains all over in lots of little pools. And what did they put in there? There was soap, like ivory liquid.
Yeah.
There was something that turned everything purple once. Yeah, they messed with it, and Jeff had to pay for it every time.
Yeah. But I mean, vandalism aside, right? I feel that it's important to allow the hacker community to get together to explore some of these what ifs together physically in a place. I mean, that's been a huge part of my journey in this field, is doing just that, like just getting together, going, hey, like let's talk about like what if.
It's always been hard at DEF CON for me to get away from things. And Miss Kitty and I one year said, let's go hide out and learn how to pick locks. And it was great. It was probably one of the first times that I really got to experience it as though I was totally an outsider who just walked in. I'm going to go. So we sat for 4 or 5 hours at some tables with complete noobs as well, like us, and had an absolute ball doing it. And that gave me a real appreciation for what people, when they go to DEF CON or any large, we'll just say DEF CON, one of the problems is it is so overwhelmingly large. And now with how many villages are there? What, 50, 70? It's like going to Europe. I mean, how much of Europe are you going to see in 3 days? And you got 3 days at DEF CON, and you got to map it out. You got to make some decisions. You are not going to see you're not going to see 10% of it. They try to give, the DEF CON 101 behavior guidelines and the 3-2-1 rules and all that. But that still doesn't prepare some of the noobs from, you walk in and expect to do everything, and there's just no way in hell.
What's the greatest value you got out of conferences like DEF CON?
Every time I go to an event, excuse me, I really, my goal is to come away with 3 nuggets. How do I get those nuggets? Those nuggets could be from conversations with folks, which I typically find the most valuable. Listening to a speaker who is completely left field, upside down, right field, completely orthogonal to any other thinking. I really enjoy that. And then the third is kind of amalgamating the entire Vegas experience and trying to step back and see how the communities relate to each other, the quote unquote Vegas community, normals, gamblers, and the hacker community. And typically something comes out of that, because at the end of the day, this whole thing is still about human beings. It's more about humans than technology. Technology is just the vehicle for humans to either do good or evil.
How do we continue this hacker spirit today, Winn? Because I feel like
go small,
right? Because I feel like some of the things not just the pandemic, but also changes in our society, excuse the pun, put some of this in jeopardy.
There's, and I'm not saying this is perfect, but there's a reason the military says a platoon is the optimum size is 9 plus a leader. Okay, somebody did some research into that and they figured out what is the optimum size for a conference where you really get something out of it. The more and more I hear from people is 250. All right, fine. Now DerbyCon was what, 2,000, I think.
Yeah.
But I've always loved DerbyCon because with 2,000 and the venue, no casinos and plenty of walkabout space and sitting space, I always found that very conducive. It's got to be venue oriented too, but typically you're going to end up in groups of 6, 10, 12 that are going to have the alcohol fueled discussions and get those aha moments. So things are going to break down naturally. That's just the way just the human nature, I guess.
Yeah.
So go small.
Yeah, because I think that gives you the ability to explore ideas together in smaller groups, not get lost in the crowd.
You want to get the right group together, and this unfortunately ends up occasionally with exclusionism.
Yes,
and it's all right. I'm a noob at a con, and here are all you guys sitting over here talking quantum negative time feedback, alien metal TCP/IP. I want to get involved in that, yet you don't have 20 years of experience to be able to discuss it. You're more than willing to, we'll let you listen, no problem at all. But maybe you are going to get more out of something that is a little more basic and work your way up. And so how do you do all that without being exclusionary? And the answer I always gave is sit in and listen, absolutely. And then there will be plenty of offline time to hopefully give you some basics. Or while we're talking, Google. How many times have we've all been on calls and somebody says, "What the hell is that? I don't know what that means." Oh, okay, got it, thanks. And teaching some of the noobs how to participate and how to learn on the fly, I think is part of our responsibility too.
Do you think it's changed from back in the day when where we started this conversation to today in how we kind of indoctrinate people into our field? Because I feel like we talk about 80s and 90s, it was a very closely guarded secret because typically people tried to figure that stuff out on their own. They gained the knowledge, and to share it with someone was kind of like to give away your work just to anyone who asked that might take that and do bad things. Do you feel like today we're in a better position to allow people to come into our field?
The need for professionals in our field now is so great that's breaking down an awful lot of barriers. And I guess it was 2011, 2012, I don't remember. Janet Napolitano, the then Secretary of DHS, made a statement at her keynote at RSA, and roughly paraphrasing, we cannot find enough qualified cybersecurity people. And that pissed me off. And I rewrote it roughly to say, what you mean to say is you cannot find enough white, religious-oriented people from somewhere in the middle of the country who have never, ever done anything wrong in their entire lives and will swear to that for their entire future and follow your lead and do exactly what you want and have a degree from college in order to fit what your expectations and your beliefs are of what a cybersecurity professional should be. And I turned that into what I call hiring the unhireable, in that that was a pivot point, at least for me, and then giving keynotes for DHS on, you guys got to get over some of this stuff. You want humans, you want bodies, you need the talent. Well, you're not going to get it the way you're going about doing it now.
So you believe that they created this mold, and then there's a limited set of people that fit that mold, therefore there's a skill shortage?
That was absolutely true, fuzzy lines and all of that.
Sure.
But by and large, true, certainly up until 2010.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think that's when the discussion, when finally there had been diversity discussion on race, there had been diversity discussion on gender. But the diversity discussion that I was trying to bring up had very little to do with that. It had much more to do with what kind of brains do you want working for you? And I advocated, number one, get over drug testing. And to have a DHS audience full of lawyers stand and applaud on that one slide, that said a great deal to me, that I had, there's a lot of friendly people that were receptive to the ideas. But the neurodifferences between you, me, and anybody, there are certain people on, and I'll use autism scale. Let's not go as well. I'll say Rain Man. Rain Man could tell you there's 9,312 pick 'em up sticks in a heartbeat.
Mm-hmm.
Now you train Rain Man because he likes it. He loves technology, would love to get a job, but how is he going to get through HR? He ain't getting through HR the way we run things these days. However, the guy who's running code development says, I got this piece of code and I have 3 semicolons that are wrong. I need somebody to go find them. There are people in the neurodiverse community who love doing that.
And are really good at it too.
And we have to be looking at the neurodiverse communities and apply those skills to where they're needed for the stuff that would stab a lot of people's eyes out. I'm not good at everything. I'm good at some stuff. I enjoy other stuff. We're all that same way, but we have excluded massive numbers of people from the potential cybersecurity skill archive sets, just through exclusionary and capricious bias and discrimination.
Is that one of the solutions to the predicament we're in today, where cybersecurity, my opinion, probably yours too, and many of our audience, is much lower than it should be? Prevalence of ransomware, critical infrastructure being attacked. We're just not using the resources that we have collectively effectively enough.
Boy, that just asks 91 questions. And I'm very hesitant to even grasp at it because it can go in so many different directions. We have still, for many years, our field said to physical security people, I'm going back a long time now, 35 years, we need you guys to work with us. And physical security guys stovepipe the hell out of everything because that's what they had been doing for 100 years or 1,000 years. Guards, guns, and gates.
Mm-hmm.
So we come along and cybersecurity, no, we got to talk together because then the cyber this can talk to the door lock that. And we got all of these quasi-kinetic connections in our mind. We have stovepiped ourselves in many ways, that if you don't speak cyber really, really well, then you don't get it. Maybe we'll come back next week. I think that we're pushing away an awful lot of the intellectual assets. We are not as tied together with the ICS and SCADA communities as I would love to see. I would love, and I mean, I'll go down my rants. One of the greatest engineering projects in history is called the Delta Works. And in 1953, I believe it was August, the North Sea flooded 1/3 of the Netherlands. Gone. And the government unified and within 4 months completely funded and built up the infrastructure, the political infrastructure and financial infrastructure to surround Holland entirely with a set of dikes. And the project is still going on, and it's supposed to, save them from a 1,000-year storm. And it is a 200-mile long set of analog controls over physical objects that are always changing in time. That is the ultimate in security implementation from at the meta level, at the macro level for me. And then you look at other engineering disciplines that I argue are very security oriented. When you get on an airplane, how much faith do you have you're going to actually land safely?
Well, the guidelines, safety protocols, procedures, and to your point, people working together have ensured that most of the time it's a safe flight.
No, I'm saying with the engine, the hardware, all of the technology to get you there, you're going to be safe?
Usually.
It's not zero, and it's not. You're not definitely going to crash. You're definitely not going to crash. It's all somewhere in the middle. The most important piece of engineering that has gone into air safety in the last 50 years is epitomized, and I use this by the GE 9000 series engines. Those are the ones that are on the 777s and the 87s. And what they have done is taken 5,000 detection points within the engine, sampling it every second in order to be able to predict failure before it happens, just like a human being works. That's exactly what we do. We sense everything in order to survive. And that's the mindset that ICS engineers are using, and notably in jet engines. So we need some radically different thinking to come into our field, and I've been bitching about it for years.
Yeah, I always wonder how we can apply that to software. It's the variable, excuse the pun again, that I always come back to, is because there are just so many variables in software and so little regulations and testing conceivably when you produce software. In other words, anyone can put software out there and anyone can go use it. And where are the safety guidelines when you compare that to an automobile or a jet engine?
This question actually goes back to the late 80s, early 90s, and I forget who raised it, but should poor programming be a felony?
Yeah, there's that ethics question.
And that discussion occurred 30 years ago. And when you get a piece of software today, the biggest lie in the universe is, yes, I read the EULA.
Yeah.
So does a EULA hold up? I don't know. Probably not. But how are you going to force penalizations when errors are just endemic to our entire field? And how you do that is you need predictive systems. And the best predictive systems out of cyberkinetic come from ICS and SCADA. And now we'll be able to start adding in, and I'm not a huge proponent of AI for a lot of things, but in this case, nonlinear predictability using AI in combination with some SCADA and ICS design and architecture is probably as good as our field could ever get.
And but that ties in your previous point, when we can't do this in a vacuum. We can't live inside of our own community, our own echo chamber.
Hell no.
We have to work with,
our echo chamber is becoming bigger and bigger, but maybe after COVID, the echo chamber is going to get a little smaller. And instead of like showing up at the Oscars, you're going to go see the Super Bowl at a buddy's house and discuss quantum security, whatever. But again, I think smaller is better when it comes to ideation and creation, because good creation comes from inspiration and epiphany moments and all of that. And having an epiphany with 35,000 people that may be of value is certainly not going to be recognized. But in a conversation of 8 of us sitting around LobbyCon, hey, that's interesting. Now, what if? As you said, and that's how I don't think we're doing it right. And I don't think we've been doing it right maybe forever, except for the very, very early days in the early 70s. We were doing it right when communications were essentially asynchronous. And when you have asynchronous communications, putting in controls is a hell of a lot easier than when you're in time-based synchronous communication in networks.
What do you think we can do better to provide solutions and or process things to help improve security as a whole?
Can you redo that question? Because I mean that was like a kind of give me a little more meat with your question, if you don't mind.
Let me rephrase it. Security vendors, a lot of them aren't really helping. How can we?
Security vendors.
Yeah.
Okay.
How can we improve that? Right? If they're all doing their jobs, we wouldn't have a lot of the breaches and ransomware that we have today.
You know, I criticize vendors a fair amount. And at the same time, I can put on their hat. How does a vendor guarantee his product? Well, that gets into, do you make poor product design illegal? How do you make them culpable? And we've got a pretty good handle on what's the FTC began in 1916, I think it was. So we got a century of not too effective enforcement in the non-cyber world. Now let's add cyber into it.
Yeah, it's very spotty. It's very spotty.
You know, I don't see that as being positive. I am a believer in a complete re-architecting of security. One of the problems that when we go back to 1989 and DARPA and survivability of the communications medium, which we've come to know as TCP, then all the other things that have been added onto it. One of the brilliant things that was built into it was that on one physical transport medium, I've got both communications and control signal.
Mm-hmm.
That is also the worst thing to do. Going back to my analog grow-ups in the audio and TV world, you've got along comes your audio signal, and then there were ways to manipulate it out of band. So if I lose some level of communication, I still have a degree of control over portions of it, depending upon the way the overall system is architected. When we have a failure, and we'll say notably in DOS and DDoS, and whether it's accidental or not, but layer one failures, there's very little backup other than another layer one system. And we don't have the out-of-band communication system to be able to, or sensory system to be able to do predictive analysis and look at things, look in the future. Again, back to the GE engine model. It can look in the future fairly easily when it's designed to. And we haven't done any of that.
Yeah. I mean, does chaos engineering kind of play into this? Sounds very, very similar. Right, where they develop models and the models kind of learn and no.
Chaos, yeah. Let's avoid chaos because that gets into a whole issue. But what you're saying is spot on. It was back when I was doing a project. I was architecting with Hughes Aircraft, ICL, Sun Microsystems, Security Dynamics, RSA, MIT Athena Project, and some others. And the goal was for JP Morgan, who was funding the whole thing, Steve Katz. Shout out, Steve. Hopefully you're watching. How are you? The goal was single sign-on security. And this project began in 89.
Wow.
So we're in the labs and we're building. And, that looks good. That's doing work. Go over to England. Okay, let's bring those pieces and everything. It's all working. Steve, everything is good. Let's deploy the pilot. Crash.
Mm-hmm.
Epic. Total crash. And the reason chaos is that looks like the end of a hysteresis loop when you're distorting in the magnetic world. In this world, what had happened was we had not bothered to calculate what happens when hundreds and hundreds or thousands of people all try to log on to the same non-accelerated server in 1989.
Capacity planning.
We didn't have the technology at the time to be able to do the user acceleration and the distribution of tasking and all of that. We didn't have the technology, but all of us had looked at it. Oh, we got this down. We got this down. Yeah, we had it down for 1 or 10 or 20 or 100 people, but not for thousands.
When I want to go back to the community for a moment, because I think one of the inspirations for this show was a documentary that you produced that was put together by your daughter, and that's Hackers Are People Too. How did that idea come about?
I don't know. Wasn't me.
You were just the money person.
What it was, and you should probably ask Ashley, but she had a college project. And she decided to do it on the hacking community because she had grown up in the hacking community and started coming to DEF CON very, very early. And she fell in love with the people, had a tremendous number of friends, and decided she wanted to do it not only to fulfill a college obligation, but as a tribute to the industry. And then she came to me and said, I said, how much? How much money? And so my production credit in that one was basically money and helping out a little bit with the audio, such as it was, because it was pretty crappy audio. But the story she told, she did tell a story. She did it extraordinarily well, and I just wish we had better audio in it.
Yeah, no, I think it's one of the works that influenced this show and one of the better ones out there. I've watched, I like to think most, if not all, the documentaries, on hackers and read many of the books, and it's certainly one of the standouts. So it did capture the hacker community and our spirit very well.
Well, I'm going to give huge credit to Jeff again at DEF CON, because the night he gave her a whole movie introductory night at DEF CON to launch it. And the odd part was it was the same night as the opening ceremonies of the Olympics, 888. So that was at the 2008 DEF CON.
That's awesome. That's awesome. It was great work. What's your favorite hacker movie or TV show aside from your daughter's documentary?
God, I haven't seen hers in ages. Best hacker movie. I actually like Hackers. Back in the day, I hated it. Back early when it came out.
Wait, why'd you hate it back? But why'd you hate it back in the day?
Because I knew a lot of these people. I knew who some of them were supposed to represent.
Yeah, was it Mark Abeen? Mark Abeen was one of the technical.
I'm staying out of any specific names.
Okay.
Not going to do specific names, but because I know a lot of these people, and it's like, but the writers were doing some takeoffs on some real people.
Yes.
In the roles, and I guess at that point in my career, I wasn't ready for Hollywood to completely misinterpret and over dramatize and for their touch. I wasn't ready for it. And I look back at Hackers and it was like, that was a lot of fun. But I think at the time, the one that probably was the most meaningful to me was Sneakers.
Very different movies.
I'm sorry?
Very different movies.
Very different. I enjoyed the intellect of it. I enjoyed was that Larry Lasker? I forget who wrote that.
I'm not sure who wrote it.
The ultimate crypto breaking machine certainly had some really intriguing possibilities and mental exercises prior, even because that was before. That was the year. No, Feynman had only come up with the quantum computer idea in '84. Sneakers was what, 96 or something. So the idea of quantum computing and the ultimate decryption mechanism was very, very early in its thinking. And I really liked what they did in the movie. And most notably, the scene. Marty, it's about the information.
Still true today.
And that was, I guess, a couple of years after I'd written Information Warfare, a couple of the volumes of it, and that really resonated with me.
Yeah, me too. That is one of the greatest lines for our industry anyway, right? Not in all of movies.
It should be for everybody, for the planet. It should be, it's a universal, that's what we're made of, is information. Everything is information. And one of the things I'm disappointed in, which gets into another one of my rants later, but I was giving a reasonably technical talk at some conference, I forget which one. There were 1,000 people there, and I say, hey, want to make sure we're all on the same page. Everybody knows Claude Shannon is. Boy, I spoonerized that. Everybody knows who Claude Shannon is. 2 hands went up. And I found that really disturbing. And I started asking about other names of people that were fundamental to the basis of everything that we're doing today. And the lack of knowledge of the fundamentals and the history, I found very disturbing.
Wait, I have a question. Who's Claude Shannon?
Claude Shannon is the father of information theory.
Oh.
Everything we do, every communication, everything on is based upon his fundamental theories from the 30s and 40s with the work of John von Neumann. Every bit of it. Signal to noise ratio, transmission capabilities, every single bit of it goes back to his fundamental works. And I really want to hope through somebody's effort, hopefully, to start getting more of this historical context built into education and training, so that I've been watching this industry do the same stupid shit for 35 years over and over and over again. And we got to do some new stuff. We need something new, because the same fundamental premises aren't working. And do we got to revisit Shannon? Maybe. Do we need to revisit von Neumann? Maybe. Do we need to revisit Anderson's work from the 70s? Maybe. How much of that is really being done and thought about, and how much do security architects and practitioners, are they really aware of the context and history of where we've been? Because I kind of got to believe that they're not too, because we're doing the same shit all over again.
Yeah.
End rant. Sorry.
Well,
Sorry,
I feel like
it gets me really heated.
Well, I feel like in some ways, we play a lot of whack-a-mole and don't think about the game and the theory as much as we should.
I'm not convinced the whack-a-mole will ever go away. Because when you have what does Facebook have? 2 billion inputs and 2 billion outputs. When you have that many gazintas and gazoutas of any system, it's whack-a-mole. It's whack-a-mole back in ENIAC. You know what the ENIAC version, the old tube computer versions of whack-a-mole was?
Actual bugs?
Replacing burnt-out vacuum tubes.
Yeah.
Depending upon the size of the machine, it could be dozens every day.
We still do a lot of that in the cloud today, which is... Right. Oh,
it's just it's the same thing with a different prism. And I think I hopefully have spent my career looking at things through a different prism.
What's next for you, Winn? What are you working on now? What are you planning on? You've retired from Hacker Jeopardy, right? 2012 was your last as an organizer of Hacker Jeopardy.
As the host of.
The host, okay.
The host, yeah. I retired from hosting it. I'm helping out, I do my bit. I kind of stay in the background, and I'll do a hello or run a category. We have the 30th coming up, so we've got something coming up. I'm playing a lot now with neuroscience and immersional experiences. I've had a number of years to be able to run around to conferences that I have no business being at, and trying to be the noob and absorb what I can and into new fields. I've become really obsessed with neuroscience, how the brain works, how the brain is being fooled, and especially with not going political, but the whole what is reality, what is real, what is fake news, all of that has proven so much how malleable and hostily malleable the neocortex is. And so I'm really been interested in that from a security standpoint, whether it's physical security, human security, or cybersecurity, because the domains interlap so clearly. So I'm working on that stuff. Working on some cool technology to actually realize it, but I'm not allowed to talk about it because my parent company pays me to do it and not talk about it.
Mm-hmm.
And then I am working on, I'm not sure, I may be working on a new book.
No, good for you.
We'll see. I've been encouraged, and we'll see if I have the wherewithal to put another one out, because I swore after Analog Network Security I wasn't going to do another.
I think every author swears at some point that they're not going to do another one, and then
something happened a few weeks ago and got my brain going, and it was like, seriously?
Were you in the
Is
shower?
that real? For part of it, I was. Absolutely. That's because the shower is the greatest what if experience for me. It is tremendous. And once this little spark appeared, I had a similar experience to my vision that I had back in 88 or 89 for information warfare. I had it, and it was like, oh, shit. And so I have spending a lot of time now researching to find out, to see if I can prove myself wrong before I come out with anything. I want to begin my own falsification efforts before I hand them over to some other friends of the family to do the falsification for me.
Mm-hmm. Well, when we look forward to what you got coming out next, as always.
So do I.
It was wonderful chatting with you today.
Well, no, I really, really appreciate the time. You came up with stuff that is not on any of my damn notes.
That's the goal.
Not one of them.
It was a fun conversation.
No,
we may have to have more conversations. When if we didn't cover what was in the notes, we gotta do it again.
No, I mean I have it down here as my first hack at age 6.
All right, quick. What was your first hack at age 6?
First day, non-destructive. Again, I've always taken DDoS and DOS off the table. Back in the day, making a phone call, even across the street, was like 20 cents and then 10 cents per minute. It was a lot of money. And apparently I used the phone a lot, and my mother got really pissed off at me. So she went out and bought a physical lock to lock the telephone. It was an old rotary phone made out of Bakelite. And so you couldn't make phone calls. I figured out how to bypass it electronically. And she really wasn't that pissed. Then it was education and ethics time. But it was, I was wondering how long it would take you to figure it out. Now we're going to sit down and I'm going to tell you, I really can't afford your shit.
So wait, it was a physical lock, but you bypassed it electronically.
Yeah.
How did that work?
In the old phones, I don't know what they call them. I don't even know the terminology anymore. Maybe. All right, you had the handset go on top, and there were 2 little plungers up there, right?
Mm-hmm.
And those plungers would turn the phone off. So when you pick up the phone, you get the dial tone. Basically, you're opening up a relay to trigger the voltage from the central network, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, when you actually dial, there is what's called a decade switch on the back end of it. And the decade switch counts pulses for each one of the numbers. So if you do 1, you get 1 pulse. You do 3, you get 3 pulses. And then that all talks to the central office over this. You're modulating this line of voltage. Well, if you take the plungers and go, I got a 3, 3, 5, 352. You can dial the phone using the plungers.
Oh, I see. So the lock was on the rotary, not on the handset.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And so it wasn't terribly brilliant. There is a way around this.
Yeah.
And listening to a stepper reel. And my father was an engineer, and my mother was an engineer. So
yeah, they were proud. I mean, they didn't like the bill, but they were proud.
My mother, she was actually very cool about it, in that it was okay. It's now time to teach a 6-year-old right from wrong.
Yes, yeah, teachable moments. Awesome. Winn, thanks again so much, and I'm sure we'll have to bring you back.
Anytime. My best to everybody. Everybody stay safe out there, and hopefully see you at DEF CON.
Thanks so much, Winn.
Cheers. Bye-bye.